It's May 20th, and on tonight's show, we go over F1 testing, the in-season testing at Barcelona that had just happened this past week. And we also go over, which is getting a little bit early every single year, but it is time to just take a look at the 2017 silly season. This is Khosla on F1. What is going on, everybody, and welcome to the second ever episode of Khosla on F1. Should have been the third, but that's all right. The plan actually was for the Spanish Grand Prix to, well, for all Grand Prix for that matter, is that I'd be doing my regular shows every Friday. That's sort of the plan right now. And what I'd end up doing is when there's a race weekend, the Sunday after the race is over, I would do a quick 10-15 minute video just going over everything that happened during qualifying in the race, and just sort of go over my thoughts and all that stuff. Unfortunately, some stuff came up last Sunday, so I couldn't really get that done. I'm very sorry about that, but expect that to start happening as we get to the Monaco Grand Prix, and hopefully I'll be able to do that. However, if you want to see essentially what I would have said, make sure you check out the blog, make sure you check out my website, that's khoslaonf1.weebly.com. There I should be posting a lot more as we start getting into the summer, as school starts to end. I have finals in a few weeks, so once that's over, I'll really start to get into this, hopefully. And hopefully I can bring a lot bigger commitment here. But if you want, you can keep tabs on that website, keep tabs on this channel, make sure you subscribe. And also, if you want, you can follow me on Twitter, as I'll be following all the F1 news and posting all that stuff, and giving my own little quick opinions on things like that. So make sure you follow me on all those things so that you can start to get a feel of what the show is all about, what this whole, I guess, unit is all about, Khosla on F1. Today's show, like I said before, we'll be going over F1 testing this past week in Barcelona, Spain, at the Circuit de Catalunya. And we'll also be going over the silly season, which, as we get through each year, it starts earlier and earlier, doesn't it? I mean, we're 5 races into the season, and we're already talking about 2017, at least driver-wise. We've been talking about 2017 aero and engine-wise for a few months now. But going to testing, well, we had Sebastian Vettel ahead on day 1, as the results here. Sebastian Vettel led the day on day 1 with a 123.2. Nico Rosberg with Mercedes 123.3, but I believe those guys were on the medium tires, so that's kind of insane. Mercedes is still super quick, and I think had those guys finished the race, it would have been a 1-2 unless something else happened. I mean, Jenson Button in third for McLaren, which is extremely, extremely encouraging. Obviously, they were on some softer compound tires, but I think with Honda bringing in new power units, I think by Canada, they are rumored to have an upgrade. And as the season goes on, aero upgrades from Mercedes, Honda will be constantly updating that engine. So I really hope that by the end of this year, we can see these guys challenging for podiums and be up there with the likes of Red Bull, Ferrari, and Mercedes. And speaking of Red Bull, Spain Grand Prix hero driver of the day, Max Verstappen, topped day 2, 123.2, 118 laps completed. Sebastian Vettel had done 103 laps the day before, with Nico Rosberg doing 119. The Mercedes guys, once again, looking pretty bulletproof, and even Renault looked pretty good, getting over 100 laps on both days. So encouraging signs from not only Renault as a team, but also their power unit. It's now really starting to come together, and they did test that new, I believe it's the upgraded Spec D engine. I don't think they have an official name for it as yet, but maybe Spec E. Obviously, I'm not one to call that name. But very encouraging signs. Both Max Verstappen and Kevin Magnussen said very positive things about it, and Esteban Ocon. So I think, it's if Renault, and there are rumors now coming out that Renault could potentially bring their engine to Monaco. which may not seem like the best idea, obviously bringing a new engine to the Monaco Grand Prix, where engine power is probably the least important thing at that track. However, to know that Renault is ready and they're pushing to get this engine out early is enough for me to feel really confident. I'm starting to really like this Red Bull team that's emerging. Last year, it was sort of tough to support them because they were constantly complaining the Renault is too slow. We're doing everything we can, but the Renault is just too bad. We can't do anything with it. This year, they've really just stopped all that. They've stopped getting into the headlines with these negative comments, and by doing that, they have pushed themselves forward. Their chassis is only incrementally better than last year, yet they're doing so much better than they were last year. So there must be some sort of correlation to that mindset. And I think having that great mindset, knowing that, okay, Renault's given us the best they can right now, and there is better stuff coming. So let's just do the best that we can with what we have. And when we get the better stuff, we're going to go win. And I think, Canada will be a real test of this to see where Red Bull stacks up. The Renault team, obviously using that old Lotus engine, Lotus chassis, I believe the E24 is what it was, until they sort of changed it to fit their engine to the RS16. But, if the Renault engine can come in Monaco, that's an extremely encouraging sign, and I think that's even more reason for Red Bull, at least, to really bring the challenge to Ferrari and Mercedes. And we saw them do that in Spain, where they have that huge straight, so take away that straight and just leave the corners. Red Bull is going to be on fire in Monaco, and I'm really looking forward to seeing this. See if Max Verstappen can defend his win. See if Daniel Ricciardo can get that win that he felt he really deserved in Spain. There's a lot of headlines going into Monaco, and next week's show is going to be awesome. I can guarantee that, because we're going to have free practice 1 and 2 to look at from Thursday, and it's just going to be fantastic. I'm really looking forward to that, and that should give us a decent idea of what to expect from that upcoming weekend. Another thing to note about testing, this was a kind of strange thing, and we saw, I think, Williams do this in 2014 at Austria. They had little winglets on their floor of their car, and this year they sort of won up to that by getting this huge sort of double-decker wing, almost, rear wing on their car, and also having these weird sort of Viking horns, I think is what people are calling them, going down to the front wing. And so according to them, it's to get themselves familiarized with how the 2017 Aero may work. And it'll be interesting to see what that all converts to, as Williams is not necessarily the best team when it comes down to Aero. I think that's probably where they need some work. Right now they are sort of being lifted up by that Mercedes engine that they have in the back, and currently they are looking to be around the 4th or 5th best team. Now, the silly season, 2017, it keeps getting earlier every single year, and, I think things really kicked off with the Max to Red Bull, back in Australia, there were all sort of rumors, and people were pretty much saying, yeah, Max is going to get that 2017 seat, it's in his contract, and Red Bull would be stupid to let go of his talent. And now that he made the move to Red Bull at Catalonia, people are now starting to talk about other changes that could be in the works. Some of the big ones are Jenson Button to Williams. It seems like a fit for him. I think he'd do very well at Williams. However, I think it'd be really nice to see him stay at McLaren, to finally benefit from having from working on that Honda engine continuously. And I think Jenson Button is the kind of guy. He's an extremely nice guy, and I think it'd be really good to see him, get maybe 1 or 2 more race wins under his belt, if he isn't over his expiration date. But no, I think Williams would be a good place for him to end his career, if not this year, and move on to something like the WEC, which is really a good place for all ex-Formula 1 drivers to go. Another rumor is Rosberg to Ferrari. Now, this one has been picking up a lot of steam recently, especially after the collision between the 2 Mercedes drivers. Now, my question is, why would Nico Rosberg, who's leading the championship, 37 points ahead of the nearest Ferrari driver, and is driving the best car on the grid. Why the hell would he move to a team that's not as good, and would most likely treat him as a number 2 driver? I think if Nico doesn't win this championship, either way, I think he will start to be treated like a number 2 driver. But at this point, and it's obviously too early to say, we still have 16 rounds to go in the championship, but it's definitely clear that Nico Rosberg has something going for him. He seems to be this new character, like I said last week. There's something different about Nico Rosberg of 2016 than there was about 2015 or 2014. He seems to care less about what's going on around him, and he's really only focusing on going race after race after race and going after those wins. Unfortunately for him, his 7-race win streak ended in Spain, and he genuinely thought he could have gotten an eighth, and based on his start, I think he could have. But that's obviously something to discuss for the conspiracy theorists. But no, I think Nico Rosberg is having a great season, and to me, it would seem like a stupid move to Ferrari. If anything, I would even see Lewis Hamilton. If he loses the championship this year, I could see him leaving F1 altogether. You know, he has money. It's not like he's racing for money. It's not like he's trying to make money. So he's obviously here for the championships. But it seems that after he got that third, after he equaled Senna, he hasn't had that motivation to go forward. I think he's still on 43 wins. So he doesn't seem to have that same motivation that he might have had 2 or 3 years ago to go out and say, yeah, I'm going to go get this championship. I'm going to go win these races. I have to do this. He's a lot more serene in that sense. We don't see that sort of angry Hamilton of 2014 every time his car broke down or he messed up. We don't see that sort of thing where he's sort of throwing his gloves, blaming the team. And, I think we are sort of seeing him fall apart in some areas, but he's keeping himself together very well. And I just don't know if he has that same drive to go out and win the championship as he did a few years ago. And that leaves Nico Rosberg right there to pick up the pieces and, take this championship fight. And, if Rosberg does go to Ferrari, which, again, I don't really see, Toto Wolff has already gone out and said Fernando Alonso would be my first pick to put in that seat. And it's been 2 years. Fernando Alonso's been dying for that Mercedes seat. And yes, he did say he would end his career with McLaren. But when you have the best car on the grid open to you, someone's extending a contract offer to you, why wouldn't you take it? So I think if something does happen to Nico Rosberg, which I really don't think will, I think Fernando Alonso will go straight to that seat, which is, to me, a very good thing. However it pans out, because I quite like Nico Rosberg. I think he's a very nice guy, and Fernando Alonso is my favorite driver as of now. Those are sort of the main things in the silly season. Again, this is a very short episode. I have 2 sheets of paper here, one of these being the results from testing. So a very short show compared to last week. But as those are sort of the main headlines of the silly season as it starts to shape up, we'll sort of see it grow more and more as the season progresses. But I'd like to just sort of go through what I'd like to see sort of as the grid next year. And there are some young talents that I'd like to see come up to Formula 1. Mercedes, I think, especially with the crash in Catalonia, I want to see this Mercedes rivalry continue, because we sort of thought it came to a climax in 2014 at Belgium, but this is a whole new high. And for us viewers at home, when it is only the Mercedes fighting out, we want to have that battle, because that's all we have. And we've sort of been deprived of that. This was the first chance we got in the 2 Mercedes drivers as they met each other on track for the first time this season, believe it or not. They collided. So praying this happens some more. No. But it'd be nice to see some more more of a contest between the 2 Mercedes drivers. Obviously, Lewis Hamilton hasn't had the best of years. And, the crash in Catalonia taking both drivers out. But while I would like to see stuff going on at Mercedes, I would like to see that inter-team rivalry sort of come back again. I want to see Ferrari and Red Bull take the fight, and I really think they go. I genuinely think they can. Ferrari's been on the back of Mercedes for 2 years. It's just, They need that little bit more just to pull ahead of them or equal them at least. Right now, they're just lagging behind us. As Mercedes increases, they try to keep stepping towards, but Mercedes keeps stepping forward incrementally. Red Bull, however, has come from way back and has come in leaps and bounds, and now they're almost up with Ferrari. So they've really done an amazing job, and if that Renault engine is as good as those guys say, I really think Red Bull could be right on it, and we could have an awesome six-way fight for the title, and that would be... when was the last time we had a six-way fight for the title? I think it was a five-way fight in 2010. So it's been a while, and put it in perspective, we're closer to 2020 than we were to 2010, which is kind of crazy. So it's been a while since we've had that crazy five-way fight for the championship, and I really, really hope that we get something like that again this year. Kimi is on form, the Ferrari in general is on form, Red Bull is starting to look really good with Max now coming into the picture and really looking like he can take the fight. I mean, imagine him taking... obviously, I don't think he'll be able to get the championship, but fighting for a championship when he's 18 years old. That's insane. And kind of makes me feel kind of useless. As a 16-year-old, 3-year gap. Oh, man. But, I'll be in Formula 1 in a few years. Just give it some time. If anyone knows anywhere I can get a ride, let me know. Mercedes, Hamilton, and Rosberg really seems like the best lineup for those guys. It's tried and tested. There are some rough patches there, but I think at the end of the day, those two will get the car home. And until the other teams start coming really close, I don't think they're going to designate a 1 and 2 driver. I don't think that's on their agenda. Ferrari, Sebastian Vettel, I can see staying around. Kimi Räikkönen, potentially. I don't really know. Marco Mattiacci, what's wrong with me? Maurizio Verbene has openly said that if Kimi is performing, he doesn't care about his age. He will happily re-sign him for another year. So, and I think Kimi is performing. Second in the championship is no easy feat. But he has obviously had a bit of good luck on his side. The DNF in Australia has put him back a little bit, but he's ahead of Lewis Hamilton, which is, they both have even same number of DNFs, which is a very impressive feat for him. If Kimi ultimately decides he's done, this is his last year, and he's out, or Ferrari decides they don't want to keep him, I think the most likely choice going up to Ferrari is Romain Grosjean. I think it could be Romain Grosjean or Carlos Sainz, because I think Carlos Sainz is in the same boat as Max Verstappen, where Max Verstappen was, but he's out of a contract for next season, and he knows open wheel racing. He's done 2 years of Formula 1 by 2017. He's a very mature driver. He's young, and I think Ferrari really needs to start investing in young talent. I think he's the perfect candidate to put in Ferrari, and as the season progresses, we can maybe see him start to really challenge Sebastian Vettel, who would probably be placed as the first driver at the time, and really start to see, hopefully, an inter-team rivalry there, as I think Carlos Sainz is a real underrated driver. I think he's a real talent, and has just been overshadowed by the massive talent that is Max Verstappen. But I think Carlos Sainz still has what it takes to win a championship or drive for a big team. Red Bull, I don't see those guys changing. Max and Dan, I think, are a fantastic duo. Daniel and Max, they're both under contract anyway, so I don't really see that changing unless someone buys out Ricardo or Max's contract. Williams, I think Button could go there, and I don't think Valtteri Bottas has impressed, at least me. I don't think he's impressed the paddock. I think there was a lot of hype about him in 2014, but a lot of that was due to the car. And people were saying, oh no, he's going to get that Ferrari seat. But when you compare him to Massa, he's more or less the same pace. So that begs the question, if Ferrari fired Felipe Massa, why would they hire someone who's the same speed as him? That wouldn't make any sense unless they're aiming to get another number 2 driver. So actually, I have it listed here. I don't really have a drive for Valtteri Bottas. And that's because I've given his seat to Jenson Button. Jenson Button and Felipe Massa, old, but very, very talented drivers. I think those guys would be a great duo and would give room in McLaren for Stoffel Van Doorn. So Fernando Alonso, Stoffel Van Doorn in the McLaren. which will hopefully be a race-winning McLaren come next year. Fingers crossed. I think Van Duren, we saw him in Bahrain. We saw him race. He got the first points for McLaren. I think he's a genuine talent. It's not easy to dominate GP2, and he did just that. So, it's tough because there's not enough room on the F1 grid. There's so much talent, but not really enough room. I think Van Duren is pretty much guaranteed a seat in McLaren in 2017. Otherwise, he's going to go looking for another team. Force India, Hülkenberg and Perez, unless I think those guys will stay the same, unless Nico Hülkenberg finally decides it's time to hang up his helmet and go to WEC, because you win Le Mans on your first shot, and then you come back to Formula 1, where you're having so many issues with the car. You start to think, maybe I should go back to WEC, That wasn't such a bad experience. I think Nico Hülkenberg, I can't speak today. But Nico Hülkenberg was a huge talent back in 2010 and 2012, that sort of era. And he just never got picked up by a big team. They always had drivers to place. And everyone was saying, oh no, this is the year Nico Hülkenberg's going to get that seat. And it just never happened. And he's sitting here 7 years later from his debut. And he's still in a midfield team. So he's got to be thinking, I'm not moving forward in F1. So why not go to WEC where I can drive for the top team, where I can drive for Porsche? And I think, honestly, the place to be right now is a factory WEC team. That's where the top drivers are going to be. If Hülkenberg does stay around, I don't see him leaving Force India. While Sergio Perez, I think he's really enjoying his time at Force India, and I don't see him leaving the sport for another few years. I don't know if he's going to get another top drive after the McLaren deal in 2013, but I think those two guys are really good talents, but there's just better drivers out there, and that's better younger drivers. I think it's a big thing. They've sort of hit that point where teams are like, oh, okay, you're experienced, but you're also older than I'd like you to be. So they're sort of in that tough spot there. Toro Rosso was really tough for me. I don't really know where people could go. I think Sainz might stick around for another year if they allow that in his contract, because the Red Bull Young Driver program doesn't have a lot of talent left. Pierre Gasly maybe, but it really doesn't look likely, and I don't see Kvyat staying around in Red Bull. Haas, if Grosjean moves up, I could see them getting Alexander Rossi, who's a huge talent and an American driver. What more could you want? And if they're sticking with Ferrari, I think they could go with Jean-Eric Vergne to take that other seat. Or if, Daniel Kvyat's out of a drive, he's still a talented driver. So we could potentially see him get a drive with Haas. I don't see them keeping Gutierrez, as I just don't think he's talented enough. I think he's only there because he is a Ferrari reserve driver. Renault, Magnussen, and Ocon. I think Palmer is only here this season because of Lotus. And, Esteban Ocon has impressed every single time he's been given a drive. He beating Palmer in, was it Shanghai or Russia? One of the two. And he did a fantastic job, really. And I don't see them getting rid of Magnussen, so he'd be replacing Palmer, who we know his seat is already under threat. So Magnussen and Ocon seems like the reasonable lineup for me, and hopefully Renault will be really in the midfield where I think they should be, and hopefully in a few years' time they'll be really fighting up front. Manor, Wehrlein and Haryanto seems to be a pretty good lineup. Haryanto brings lots of money for the cash-strapped Manor team, and Wehrlein is the Mercedes junior driver, so it makes sense to put him in their essentially Mercedes junior car. Or they could do, after Spain, they could, like I said in my blog, take Hamilton and put him in Manor for a few races and bring Wehrlein up. Do a little Red Bull driver swap sort of thing. But no, I don't see Wehrlein moving up just yet. Depending on what happens in 2017, we'll have to see. But I think it's going to be him in a Manor unless Mercedes does lose one of their drivers, in which case he might be on that list. But I don't know. People have said he's a lot like Jules Bianchi, which is a huge praise from the Manor team. but we haven't seen many performances from him. Monaco is obviously really a driver track, so hopefully we'll sort of see a very good performance. I think Bahrain so far is his most notable performance, really running up with the midfield. And Sauber, we don't even know if they're going to be on the grid next year. If they are, Nasser and Ericsson seems like the lineup they'd stick with, but honestly, at this point, we don't know. It's tough to call that, really. Sauber's in so much economic turmoil that we really can't call what drivers they'd be having. It's most likely they'd be getting drivers who bring a lot of money to the table versus a lot of talent, and I think we're going to see the fall of Sauber here in the next few years. I don't see them really continuing on as even a midfield team. So that's sort of what I'd like to see, sort of what my predictions are, at least right now. As the season progresses, we'll sort of go on, as sort of contracts are confirmed, we'll start to see how things shape up, and start to see where people end up. But right now, that's sort of what I see in the 2017 lineup, and it does kind of suck to see some drivers going away. There's a lot of talent out there, but I think there's just not enough seats in that, and it's tough for the drivers who can't make the cut, who may have the talent, because there are drivers there with more money, and in this day and age, really, money is a huge factor in getting a drive here. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed today's episode of Khosla on F1. It is May 20th, 2016, in case that's not in the title down below. But if you want to stay tuned and want to keep getting these videos, make sure you subscribe here to me on YouTube. Make sure you can follow me on Twitter at Khosla on F1. And also make sure to check out the website, khoslaonf1.weebly.com. And hopefully I'll start doing more daily updates, as I said earlier in the video. But I think that's all for today. So thank you all so much for watching. Please leave a like if you liked it. It really helps me out, and it really supports me. Thank you so much, and I will see you guys next Friday.